In our last episode, the drama shifted from heartbreak to a chilling psychological standoff. We saw Georgie return to a tense Heartland and, in a quiet moment with Amy, piece together the devastating truth of the family's silent suffering. The story ended with Georgie offering Amy a shocking new perspective. That Ty wasn't pushing her away out of anger, but was letting her go out of a tragic, misguided love, believing her heart had truly moved on with Nathan. If you missed that incredibly emotional and insightful episode, the link to part 10 is in the description below. Now, we see how this new terrifying thought affects Amy as a familiar face returns to the ranch, forcing everyone to confront the ghosts of their past. With that out of the way, let's get started on the story. The open road was a ribbon of black asphalt, unfurling across the vast, sun-bleached prairies of Saskatchewan. Tim Fleming had the windows down, the warm summer air whipping through the cab of his truck, carrying the sweet, earthy scent of cut hay. Beside him, his son Shane was navigating, the two of them in the middle of a week-long cattle-buying trip. It was a rare and precious thing, this easy solitude. The conversations were light, the silences comfortable, and for a few days, Tim felt a simple, uncomplicated peace that was so often elusive in his life. He was just a man on the road with his son, the complicated emotional landscape of Heartland a distant reality. He was laughing at a joke Shane had just made when his phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with Lou's name. He answered it casually, one hand on the wheel.
Hey, honey, what's up? Everything okay back home?
The voice that answered him was not Lou's usual cheerful, in-control tone. It was a choked, frantic sob, a sound of such raw, unbridled emotion that every muscle in Tim's body went rigid with alarm.
Dad?
Lou's voice was a shattered whisper.
Dad, you need to come home.
Lou? What is it? What's happened?
Tim's mind instantly raced through a horrific list of possibilities, his knuckles white on the steering wheel.
Is it Amy? Lindy? Is someone hurt?
No, everyone's safe, but oh God, Dad, I don't even know how to say this.
She was openly weeping now, her words punctuated by ragged, gasping breaths.
It's Ty.
Tim's blood ran cold. Ty. The name was a ghost, a closed wound.
What about him, Lou?
He's alive,
she said, the words a torrent of impossible truth.
He's back. He's here, at Heartland, Dad. Ty is alive.
The world stopped. The truck, the road, the entire spinning planet seemed to grind to a halt. Tim's foot, which had been pressing the accelerator, went slack. He stared blankly out the windshield, his mind refusing to process the words he had just heard. It was a dream. It had to be a cruel prank. It was impossible.
Lou!
His own voice sounded like it was coming from a great distance.
Don't joke about that. You can't ever joke about something like that.
I'm not joking.
She cried, her voice rising with hysterical certainty.
I'm looking at him right now. He walked up the driveway this morning. It's him.
Tim finally pulled the truck over to the gravel shoulder, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. He needed the world to be still, because his own mind was a chaotic, violent storm. Alive. After 4 years of being a ghost, a memory, a source of unending pain for his daughter. Alive. Shane was looking at him, his face a mask of confusion and concern.
Dad, what's wrong?
Tim held up a hand, silencing him, his entire being focused on the voice in his ear. He made Lou repeat it 3 more times, his questions sharp and direct, searching for any crack in the impossible story. But her story held. With every word, the impossible began to solidify into a terrifying, miraculous, and earth-shatteringly complicated reality. His purpose, once the simple task of buying cattle with his son, shifted in an instant. The easy piece of the road trip was over. His family was in the middle of an emotional cataclysm, and he had to be there.
We're coming home,
he said, his voice now a low, resolute growl.
Don't do anything. Don't call anyone else. We're on our way. We'll be there as fast as I can drive.
He hung up the phone and sat in silence for a long moment, his hands gripping the steering wheel. He took a deep, shuddering breath, the first one since he'd answered the call, and turned to his son.
We have to go home, now.
The drive back to Heartland was a long, silent marathon of grim determination. Tim pushed the truck to its limits, the miles flying by in a blur of prairie and foothills. His mind was a chaotic whirl of questions, but beneath it all was a single, powerful, and fiercely protective instinct. This wasn't just a miracle, it was a crisis. A man returning from the dead after 4 years. What would that do to Amy? To Lindy? To the fragile peace they had all fought so hard to build? He wasn't just returning to witness a reunion, he was returning to manage the fallout. It was late when he finally roared up the Heartland driveway, his headlights cutting through the darkness and sweeping across the front of the house. He was out of the truck before the engine was even off, his boots crunching on the gravel, his eyes scanning the property with a fierce intensity. And then he saw him. Standing on the porch, bathed in the warm, welcoming light, was a ghost. It was Ty, but it was a version of him that was both intimately familiar and terrifyingly strange. He was thinner, his face carved into sharper angles by years of hardship. The easy, confident swagger was gone, replaced by a quiet, haunted stillness. But it was him. It was the man his daughter loved, the father of his granddaughter. Tim walked slowly towards the porch, the distance of the yard feeling like a mile. They stopped a few feet from each other, two complex, stubborn men, bound by the woman they both loved, just staring. The air crackled with 4 years of unspoken grief, of impossible truths. Tim broke the silence, his voice a low, rough growl, thick with an emotion he rarely showed.
You son of a gun.
Ty's face, which had been a mask of weary tension, broke, a single tear tracing a path through the dust on his cheek. He gave a choked, watery laugh.
Hey, Tim.
That was all it took. The dam of masculine restraint broke. Tim closed the final distance and pulled Ty into a hard, desperate hug. It wasn't soft or gentle. It was a fierce, almost violent embrace, a father-in-law clinging to the son he thought he had lost forever, a silent, powerful acknowledgement of the miracle and the pain of his return. Later, after the initial storm of his arrival had calmed, Tim did what he always did. He got to the point. He handed Ty a cold beer and led him to the porch swing, away from the hovering, anxious eyes of the rest of the family.
All right.
Tim said, taking a long swallow of his beer.
No more secrets. No more whispers. You look me in the eye, and you tell me everything. What the hell happened to you, Ty?
Ty looked at the man beside him. He looked into the eyes of another flawed, complicated father, a man who had made his own share of mistakes and had lived a life full of regret and hard-won redemption. And for the first time, Ty felt he could tell more than just the sanitized, factual version of his story. The words started as a trickle and then became a flood. He told Tim everything, not just the explosion and the amnesia, but the profound, soul-crushing loneliness of being a man with no name, no past. He spoke of the flashes of memory, Amy's smile, Lindy's laugh, that had been both a lifeline and a form of torture. He described the maddening bureaucratic nightmare of trying to prove he was alive, of being a ghost fighting a system that had already buried him. He spoke of the shame, the helplessness, and the constant gnawing fear that even if he did make it back, the world he had left behind would be gone forever. Tim listened, his gaze never leaving Ty's face. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer platitudes. He just sat there, the stoic patriarch, and absorbed the full, harrowing weight of the last 4 years of Ty's life. And in his eyes, a new, deeper understanding was forged. He saw the resilience, he saw the pain, and he saw, with a clarity that would inform everything that was to come, just how truly broken the young man beside him was. The porch swing creaked rhythmically in the gathering twilight, a lonely metronome marking the time in the heavy silence that followed Ty's story. Tim sat for a long while after the last, harrowing details had been spoken, his beer bottle resting untouched on his knee. He looked at the man beside him, a man he had once seen as the tough, resilient kid who had won his daughter's heart, and now saw as a survivor a man who had been fundamentally broken and had painstakingly pieced himself back together. The respect Tim felt in that moment was profound, but it was quickly overshadowed by a deep, paternal concern for the future. He had heard the story of the past 4 years. Now he needed to know about the next 4 days. He took a long, slow swallow of his beer, the silence finally stretching to its breaking point.
It's a miracle you're here, Ty.
Tim said, his voice a low, rough growl.
A damn miracle. Anyone who could walk through all that and find his way home, that's a man with a spine of steel.
He turned, his gaze sharp and direct, pinning Ty in place.
But what are you gonna do now? That's the past. What about your future? What about Amy? What about your family?
The question was a bucket of ice water, snapping Ty out of the grim reverie of his memories. He looked away, his own gaze drifting out towards the darkening fields where the silhouettes of horses moved like peaceful shadows. This was it. The moment he had to try and explain a decision that felt both absolutely necessary and completely insane.
I just want her to be happy, Tim.
He began, his voice quiet, steeped in the heartbreaking resignation he had carried for weeks. That's all that matters now. After everything she's been through, she deserves to be happy.
Of course she does.
Tim said, his tone growing impatient.
What's that got to do with you?
Everything.
Ty replied, a sad, humorless smile touching his lips. He finally turned back to face his father-in-law. The woman I came home to, she's not the same woman I left. She's stronger. She had to be. She survived 4 years of thinking I was dead. She raised our daughter on her own. She ran this place. She built a whole new life from the ashes of the old one. And that life, it doesn't have the same space for me that the old one did. He took a breath, the words of his painful conclusion spilling out.
She has a rhythm now, a support system, a peace she fought for. And my being here, it's a disruption. It's chaos. It's forcing her to choose between a ghost and the life she actually has. And the man she has in that life now, Nathan. He's a good man. He's stable. He makes her smile. He's good to Lindy. He was there.
And you're here now.
Tim countered, his voice hard.
It's not the same.
Ty shook his head, the look on his face one of utter, tragic certainty.
My love for her has to be about what's best for her. And what's best for her is peace, stability. Not a broken man who is a constant, painful reminder of everything she lost. The most loving thing I can do for her is to let her go.
Tim stared at him, his face slowly hardening into a mask of disbelief, which then curdled into a deep, visceral anger. He stood up from the swing so abruptly it swayed violently. He began to pace the length of the porch, a caged lion, the veins on his neck standing out. Ty watched him, confused. He had expected sadness, maybe even a reluctant understanding. He had not expected this raw, potent fury.
Don't you dare!
Tim finally snarled, whirling around to face him.
Don't you dare sit on this porch and feed me that noble, self-sacrificing garbage!
Tim, I'm just trying to do the right thing.
The right thing?
Tim cut him off with a harsh, bitter laugh.
You think the right thing is to walk away? To give your family to another man because you think it's what's best for them? You think that's love? That's not love, son. That's fear, and it's the easy way out.
He took a step closer, his eyes blazing with the fire of a man confronting the ghosts of his own past.
You want to know what happens when a man decides to let his family go because he thinks he's not good enough, because he thinks he's doing them a favor? You ask me, because I did it. I'm the expert.
The raw, personal pain in Tim's voice silenced any protest Ty might have had.
I wasn't there for my girls when they were growing up. I was a ghost, just like you said you were. I'd show up for a holiday, a birthday, play the part of the fun rodeo dad for a weekend, and then I'd disappear again. And you know what I told myself? I told myself it was what was best for them. That their lives were more stable without me in it. That I was too much of a mess to be a real father.
He pointed a finger at Ty, his hand trembling with the force of his emotion.
It was a lie. The truth is, I was a coward. I was scared of the hard work. I was scared of facing my own failures. I was scared of not being the father they deserved. So I took the easy way out. I walked away. And I have spent 20 years regretting it every single damn day of my life.
He looked out at the dark fields, his voice dropping, thick with the weight of unshed tears.
I missed it all, Ty. The school plays, the scraped knees, the heartbreaks. I was a visitor in my own daughter's lives. I became a ghost at my own family's table. And let me tell you, there is no lonelier place on God's green earth to sit. You don't get a second chance. You don't get to come back from the dead.
He turned back, his gaze fierce, pinning Ty with its intensity.
Except you did. The universe, God, whatever you want to call it, gave you a miracle. It gave you a second chance that men like me would kill for. And you're going to stand here and tell me you're going to throw it away because you're scared. Because it's hard? You don't get to do that.
It's not just me I'm thinking about.
Ty finally shot back, his own voice cracking.
It's Amy. It's Lindy.
Then fight for them.
Tim roared, his voice echoing in the still night air.
You fight for your wife. You prove to her every single day that you're the man she needs, even if you're broken. And you fight for your daughter. You don't concede her to another man. You show up and you earn your place in her heart. It's going to be the hardest work you've ever done, but you do it. Because if you don't, you will wake up one day, 20 years from now, an old, lonely man. And the only thing you'll have for company is the ghost of the family you were too afraid to fight for.
The force of Tim's words, so raw, so personal, so deeply true, left Ty utterly speechless. His carefully constructed, logical decision, the one that had seemed so mature and selfless in the lonely silence of the night, now felt like what Tim had called it, a coward's escape. Tim's passionate, desperate warning had not solved his problem. It had just shattered his solution, leaving him more lost and conflicted than ever before. The ghost of Tim's future now a terrifying new specter to haunt him. The silence that followed Tim's impassioned speech was heavy, charged with the raw energy of unspoken truths and buried regrets. Ty sat on the porch swing, his head bowed, the weight of Tim's words pressing down on him like a physical burden. He had come to his decision with what he believed was a clear, logical mind, an act of selfless love. But hearing it reflected back through the lens of Tim's own painful history had stripped away its nobility, revealing the raw, quivering fear beneath. Was he just running? Was he using Amy's happiness as a shield against his own inadequacies? He finally looked up at Tim, his eyes filled with a new wave of turmoil. The carefully constructed composure he had maintained for weeks finally fractured, and for the first time since his return, Tim saw the true depth of Ty's inner conflict.
But it's not that simple, Tim.
Ty's voice was thick with emotion, the carefully constructed dam of his resolve finally cracking.
You don't understand about Nathan, about what they have. It's not just about me being gone for 4 years. They have a real connection. She cares about him. He cares about her and Lindy. She loves him. He's been there for her. He's been the consistent one.
He took a shuddering breath, the words tumbling out now, a desperate confession he hadn't even fully admitted to himself until this moment.
I told him it was okay. I told Nathan that I was letting her go, that he should be with her.
The confession hung in the air between them, a shocking, unexpected revelation. Tim stared at Ty, his anger slowly giving way to a stunned disbelief. This was far more complicated than he had imagined. It wasn't just about Ty's fear. It was about a promise made, a silent agreement forged in the crucible of Ty's own perceived inadequacy.
You what?
Tim's voice was barely a whisper, laced with a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension.
You gave him your blessing? You told another man he could have your wife?
Ty nodded miserably, tears welling in his eyes, blurring the porch lights into hazy halos.
I thought it was the right thing. I thought I was being mature, selfless.
His voice broke on the last word, the weight of his misguided nobility crashing down around him. He looked at Tim, his eyes pleading for understanding, for some kind of absolution. Tim ran a hand roughly through his hair, his mind reeling. This was a disaster, A slow-motion train wreck fueled by grief, guilt, and a monumental misunderstanding of what it truly meant to fight for family. He had come here to light a fire under Ty, to push him to reclaim his life. But he had just discovered that Ty had already laid down his arms in a misguided act of surrender. He placed a heavy hand on Ty's shoulder, his initial anger replaced by a deep, troubled empathy.
"Oh, kid."
He said softly, his voice laced with a weary sadness.
"Oh, Ty, you messed up big time."
Just then, the back door of the house creaked open, and Amy stepped out onto the porch. She had been watching them from the window, the intensity of their conversation, Tim's raised voice, and now the sight of Ty's tear-streaked face had filled her with a growing unease.
"Dad? Ty? What's going on?"
She asked, her voice filled with concern as she approached them, her gaze fixed on Ty's distressed expression. Ty immediately straightened up, scrubbing at his eyes with the back of his hand, trying to regain some semblance of composure. He forced a weak, unconvincing smile.
"Nothing, Amy. Just talking."
His voice wavered slightly, betraying the raw emotion that was still simmering beneath the surface. He avoided her gaze, his discomfort palpable. Amy's brow furrowed, her concern deepening. She looked from Ty's averted eyes to her father's troubled face, sensing the weight of something significant and upsetting hanging in the air. Tim, seeing the worry etched on his daughter's face, placed a comforting hand on her shoulders, his gaze meeting hers with a look that conveyed a silent apology and a promise of complicated truths to come. He squeezed her shoulders gently, a gesture of paternal reassurance in the face of a storm he now knew was inevitable. Ty, unable to meet Amy's concerned gaze, mumbled a quick excuse and stood up from the swing.
I think I'm going to turn in. Long day."
He walked quickly towards the guest room door, his back to them, a solitary figure retreating into the temporary sanctuary of a room that was never meant to be his permanent place in this house. Amy watched him go, her heart clenching with a familiar, aching confusion. She looked at her father, her eyes filled with unanswered questions. Tim just sighed, his hand still resting on her shoulder, his own gaze following Ty's retreating figure, the weight of the devastating secret he now carried heavy on his heart. The comfortable rhythm of the evening had been shattered, replaced by a palpable tension, a sense that the fragile peace at Heartland was about to unravel completely.